Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Form Check Friday, the show where we take your user-submitted, viewer-submitted videos, and we critique them on this big screen behind me like you see right now. This first video is what we left off with last week, and this is Joseph. He's doing some bench press, looking to do his first comp this year. He says he's having trouble being consistent with his pressing and sometimes gets some bicep issues. So let's take a look and see what we can notice. First off, this looks like an RPE 11. If you are getting pain, you might be doing too much. Now, in a lot of cases, load management is going to be the #1 way we can manage pain issues, especially with consistency issues. If we're having trouble lifting similarly each time, maybe we need to lift a little more submaximally a little more often. So that would be my #1 recommendation, is stop taking reps like this in the gym. They don't really do you that much good. Now, if we get into the more specifics of the lift, from about here to the chest, we're kind of dumping the bar. You can see it very visibly bounces on his chest during the touch. And that tells me we're definitely not in control of the bar when it's on the chest. Any referee worth their salt is going to make you hold it there longer if you're bouncing. So do yourself a favor and let's try to get a lot more consistent with our touch, maintain more control in that bottom position. Other than that, the bench actually doesn't look too bad. We're seeing a fair bit of sort of backing up, good bar path. We are losing the shoulders quite a bit as we go through the rep, but I think in large part that's due to how loose the bottom position was and just straight up how heavy it is. It's a heavy rep. So let's train a little bit lighter, train a little bit smarter, and try to maintain a little bit better control on the chest. Now our next lifter here is Daniel, and Daniel's going to be doing some deadlifts. So he says his current max is 465. He says he's having trouble seeing his hips shoot up pretty regularly and hasn't seen nearly as much progression on his squat as he has in his deadlift. So let's see if we can get into why exactly that might be. So first off, we're setting the hips entirely too low. So I'd like for you to push the knees back, let those hips back and up a little bit so that we can create a consistent position we can pull from. I guarantee you anything, as soon as you start to pull, those hips are gonna come up behind you and then you're pushing the knees back in. So we need to be comfortable in more of a leaned over position, because right now you're doing everything in your power to stay super upright while deadlifting, and it's just not necessarily the most conductive thing. Now, this is a good position. This is not a bad position at all. Imagine if we started from a similar position, especially as it relates to the shin angle, and stayed in that position as we go through instead of pushing the knees in under the bar. Now, the trouble with pushing the knees in under the bar is that if you're looking to compete, you can get called for ramping or hitching even if you push the knees in under the bar, use them to support the bar while you finish the lift. So, stop trying to be so upright. Let's keep the knees back more, hips back more, and let's get comfortable in that leaned over position. Finish the quads before the hips. And what I mean by that is go ahead and at this point, instead of, okay, so right around here, I want you to continue pushing through the knee joint so you can straighten the legs as your hips come through, instead of leaving the knees bent, pushing them in under the bar, and then trying to straighten the hips first. Hopefully that makes sense. Best of luck with that, man. And now we have a submission from Kofi Richards. Now he's doing some squats here. He says his deadlift is way higher than his squat, deadlift being 230 and his squat being 185 kilos. So he says he's 17 years old, so still young, lots of open road ahead, 74 kilos. He thinks that the two should be a lot closer, and he's actually been critiqued on our live stream. If anybody's interested in coming in for one of our live streams, go ahead and head over to twitch.tv/Calgary Barbell and hit follow so that you can stay tuned and be notified when we live stream. But I told him to slow his descent and stop dancing his feet around. So let's see if we can figure out what is going on here. So ironically enough, we can't see his feet, but that wasn't too bad in terms of sort of going back and forth on the feet. Now let's see if his descent is different at all. So it looks a little bit more controlled there. We're controlling more of the range of motion before the sort of dip phase of the movement, which I think is a good thing. Upper back position looks good and dialed in. Yeah, we're maintaining good position under the bottom. Honestly, I don't think there's anything that needs technique correction here. Now, in terms of the progression, we might just need to find the formula for your squat. Now, each lifter is going to respond to a different amount of stress differently, and especially as it relates to exercise variations, average intensities, average RPEs. So you're gonna have to spend some time experimenting. You're 17, so you've obviously, I mean, at most you've been training for 4 or 5 years. I'm gonna guess less than that, and you've already built a really good, technically sound squat. So the big thing here is to not get too far ahead of yourself, be patient, and do some experimentation. Try some different programs, try some different techniques, and rotate those through on your lift. There's nothing to say that you need to use the same approach for each lift. Some people's bench responds to high intensity and their squat responds to low intensity. So take a look at your programming, see what you've been doing in the past, and try to get away from that for your squat programming. It's clearly not working at the rate in which you would like, so try some different things. All right, and now we have a bench press submission from Mr. Matt here. Now, Matt says that he wants to be photoshopped and looked at disgustedly for the thumbnail. So if you saw that on your way in here, it was by request. Now, Matt's been lifting 2 years. He did 5x5 for a while. He's done the CBB's free 16-week program. And despite the advice I give to most people, he swapped from a wider grip bench to a much closer grip bench. You can see how very close his grip is here. He's almost at the edge of the knurling, and he says that since he's done that, his shoulder pain has diminished greatly and his bench press has improved quite a bit. So he also said that his setup's a little bit wonky on this because the bench was not far enough into the rack, so he really had to reach back to pull the bar out. Now let's take a look at these bench presses. Obviously, I'm not going to tell him to widen his grip because he just finished telling me that the narrower grip seems to work much better. Now, I would like to see a fair bit more control in the contact here. It looks like the bar's coming in, it's hitting, it's depressing him, it's flattening his arch and his upper back position, or his sort of upper body position rather, a fair bit. Second rep was a lot better, but I still think we could contribute more consistent leg drive and use a bit of a lighter touch a little bit more control in the touch and a little bit of a lighter touch to increase the consistency from rep to rep. And I think that would be probably my main bit of advice for you, Matt. So hopefully you found the thumbnail amusing, and hopefully that helps, man. All right, now up next we have Samantha. Samantha's a 2-year-old 12-kilo lifter who competes in the Daycare Powerlifting Federation, or the DPF. She said she could use some help with her deadlift, and this is a working set at 5 kilos. So let's take a look here. Now, I actually think, first off, good smooth lockout. We could probably build a little bit more tension before approaching the dumbbell, but in all honesty, the hips are at a decent height. We're using a little bit of the legs to kind of push through. Lockouts are nice and clean, maybe a little bit over-exaggerated on that second rep, but overall, I would say just give it time, Samantha. I think you have a wonderful future in powerlifting, and I think with a little bit of time and practice, you could be a superstar. All right, now our next one comes from Caleb. This is a 365-pound sumo deadlift for a double. Now he says he's been powerlifting for about 4 months, recently switched from conventional to sumo, and he says he's having a small problem with hip pain at lockout. So we're gonna let this video play through one more time, and I will see everybody in the next video. If you have any good advice for Caleb, go ahead and leave it in the comments below. Remember, constructive criticism only, and we'll see everybody in the next one.